Welcome. This is Rhythm for All. I'm Anirudh Venkatesh, and this is week huh, 22. I hope I'm right about that. Okay, so what are we doing this week? Well, we are going to look at how to put phrases into what I call containers. So, what are containers? Well, there's something you put phrases into. What can you put phrases into? Well, you can put them in time. So our containers are made of time. So, how do we do this? So, last week we talked about moving, we talked about using our hands to signify the progression of time and loops within which we can improvise. So, we're going to start with a bit of that. So, last time I think I talked about something called Adi Talam, but here it is to review. So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so that's basically a clap, a little finger, ring finger, middle finger, a clap, a reverse clap, a clap, and a reverse clap. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so there we have our container. Yes, that's as simple as it gets. So that is a container in which we can now put phrases in a way that we fill up this bigger container. So our 8 counts are you could call it the bigger container, and this has a bunch of little containers in it, 8 of them to be specific. And even these 8, like I mentioned last week, can be grouped into slightly bigger containers. So our first container is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's one container. The next one is a clap and a reverse clap. That's the second container. And for our third container, we have another clap and reverse clap. So when we join this together, we have 3 medium-sized containers, which are 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1. 4, 5, 6. That's 2. And 7, 8. That's 3. So now how do we fill phrases within this? So it's very similar to what we've done before, where we are going to just say, so I'll cut to syllables in a way that we fill this container up. So, ta, ka, di, mi. You see how I filled each one of these counts with a syllable? So, ta, ka, di, mi. And then I can say ta, ka, jo, nu. Okay? Ta, ka, di, mi. Ta, ka, jo, nu. 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 Okay? So that's one easy way to fill it up. We can do more. We can do a lot more, in fact. So I have had the good fortune of listening to many Carnatic artists, rhythm percussion artists especially, and wow, the things they do with this are just mind-blowing. So I am by no means as good as them, but let's try something. Okay, let's try something simple. So instead of just doing one syllable per count, let's do a little more. So instead of ta, ka, di, mi, ta, ka, jo, nu, what we're going to do is we're going to double our syllables. So we're going to put 2 syllables in each container. Okay, we have 8 containers, the littlest containers I mean. So we're going to put 2 syllables in each of them. How is that going to sound? Takkadimi takkajonnu, takkadimi takkajonnu, takkadimi takkajonnu, takkadimi takkajonnu. Okay, so that's another thing we can do. How about we put, let's say, 4 syllables in each container. How will that sound? Takkadimi takkajonnu, 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 takkadimi takkajonnu. There you have it. 4 per container. How about we mix and match a little? So let's see. Okay, let's try this. Takkadimi, takkadimi, takkadimi takkajonnu, takkadimi, takkadimi, takkadimi takkajonnu tam. So what did I do there? The first 4, I'm just going 1 syllable per container. So takkadimi. Then I go 2 per count. So takkadimi. And then for the final 2, I'm going to say 4 per count. So takkadimi takkajonnu. So altogether, what happens is takkadimi, takkadimi, takkadimi takkajonnu, takkadimi, takkadimi, takkadimi takkajonnu, takkadimi, takkadimi, takkadimi takkajonnu tam. Okay, why do I keep ending on the tam like that? Because in this taal, so this entire thing is called a taal, a kind of loop, a kind of cycle, a way of signifying a kind of repeated pattern. That repeated pattern is a repeated pattern of containers, not necessarily a repeated pattern of the syllables that we're speaking. So that forms the framework over which we are improvising something, whatever we want, composing, improvising, however you have it. So, I lost my train of thought. So, what we're going to do is we're going to see how this kind of container framework helps us in showing which parts are important and which parts are not so important, which parts are in focus, which parts are not so much in focus, and what kind of a time flow are we expecting versus the kind of conflict or expectation breaking that we can achieve with the use of our syllables. So if I have something like takkadimi takkajonnu, it's going fairly normal. What if I were to do instead takkita takkadimi takkajonnu takkadimi? You see, now the parts where I'm emphasizing the syllables are different compared to where the claps or the counts are coming in. This has to do with the episode on shifted loops, so be sure to check that out to understand what I just did. Now, this brings me back to why am I ending with tam on that very first one. So in Adi Talam and many other Talams, the first count, the very first one, is the all-important beginning, and we really want to emphasize that. Not all the time. So if you were to emphasize that every single cycle, it would be a little repetitive. So what happens, and this goes into the aesthetics of how percussion is done, especially in India, where you have, I should say where rhythm is done, not just percussion, where rhythm, the way rhythm is thought of in India is in terms of the taal and in terms of how we emphasize or de-emphasize certain points in the taal. So the one is considered to be super important, the beginning, the start, the focus, So if you were to de-emphasize that, it creates a bit of conflict. And if you do that enough and then finally bring back, the emphasis on that one, it creates a kind of resolution. So conflict, resolution. And that one thing has been expanded to include so much variation, so much variety that we will cover over time, along with even other systems, not just Indian systems of rhythm. But in India especially, this has a major focus. Okay, that's something to keep in mind. So let's try to do something in a way that we really emphasize that one. Okay, let's see, what can we do? Alright, here's a very simple one. This gets used all the time. So, takadimi takajono, takadimi tam, takadimi tam, takadimi tam. This gets used so much all across the board. In fact, sometimes overused, sometimes abused, because people resort to doing this when nothing else occurs. I am guilty of that too. So, we have takadimi takajornu. The first four counts go with takadimi takajornu, 2 syllables per count, and then we move to takadimi takajornu, takadimi tam, takadimi tam, takadimi tam. So what am I doing there? I'm going 4 syllables per count, but in between the tam that I'm saying, that's 2. Okay, so that's at more of the 2 syllables per count length, right? This relates to the doubling and halving that we did a couple of episodes ago. So over there, what we did was we mixed 2 different tempos and joined them together, and now with a bit of variation on that, you can create a pattern that leads you towards the first beat of the taal, the first count. Okay, so how are we doing that? Takadimi takajornu, takadimi tam, takadimi tam, takadimi tam. So you see the takadimi tam, takadimi tam, takadimi tam. So those takadimis, they are coming at places you don't really expect it, especially the second takadimi, and then the tam shows that kind of it's like a rest, it's like a resolution. But initially those tams are not coming right on a strong beat. They're coming somewhere in between the counts, so somewhere in the middle of the containers, not at the beginning of them. So that creates the effect of a bit of conflict, and then resolution. So just the last 4 beats would be takadimi tam, takadimi tam, takadimi tam. So this final tam, when it comes in that 1, that's our resolution that we've been looking for. And this is how we begin to fit some phrases within containers. Our container is the taal, or littler containers going all the way down to the counts of the taal, or what would we call the parts of the taal. There are more technical terms for this, but we can just call them counts, parts. So the parts are first part 1, 2, 3, 4, second part 5, 6, third part 7, 8. The counts are of course 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the biggest container is our taal, which is just that one entire big heap. So when we come on the 1 of the taal, that is our most important resolving beat. We try to emphasize that, we try to bring out its importance by leading up to it with a series of conflicts, which finally end with resolution on that first important count, which is also called the sum, by the way, sum or summum. But yeah, you don't need to know that. It's just something useful, because we will be referring to these things by names later on. But for now, important beat. So I'll do it one last time and then we're done for today. So, takadimi takajonu takadimi tam. Alright? Try that out. Try to come up with your own patterns. Try to fit phrases within this cycle and try to conclusively end your sequence of phrases on that first beat, the sum. I shall see you next week. Hope you have fun with this. And that's about it. So, see you next week. Bye bye.